In this video, we will be providing an overview of Nick Couldry's concept of the extended audience. Couldry is interested in this reading on how the audience is different now because of some of our technological changes compared to how we've traditionally thought about the audience. And the extended audience as a concept brings in ideas of how the audience differs in terms of what the audience is doing, but also physically where the audience is. And so for Couldry, attention to audience is important because the experience of being an audience member is this sort of shared cultural reference point that we all have. We all have an experience of audiencehood, and we associate that with more than just watching television, streaming Netflix, things like that. And so the audience deserves attention because it is an experience that we all are very familiar with and we understand. But there are three challenges that Couldry identifies to our current understandings and analysis of the audience. The first of these is technological. With changes in technology, introductions of devices like smartphones and streaming platforms and user-created content, all this kind of stuff, there's a need to try to understand the audience's relationship to an ever-increasing number of technologies and media outlets. Experiences like watching people play games on Twitch are similar enough to our traditional understandings of what it means to be part of an audience that they aren't completely foreign, but they are unique enough that we need to try to develop new ideas of what it means to be an audience member. And so it's not just that we've had new media introduced, but also old and new media are interlocking in increasingly varied ways. And so, for example, it would be easier to develop theories around the new audience if a device like this just had its very specific uses that were new and different. But the fact that we're still consuming and interacting with older forms of media, TV shows, movies, radio, all that kind of stuff exists in the new technology, we have to adapt our understanding of the audience in different ways. Linked to that technical change is the second of these changes and challenges that face our understandings of the audience, and that's the socio-spatial dimension of understanding the audience. And so as technologies have changed, one of the things we've been talking about throughout the course is that with all these changes, the actual location of the audience has obviously expanded. We aren't all in our living rooms sitting in front of our TVs all the time. We are out in the world more with our media, with our technology. And so that spatial experience where an audience actually is has grown exponentially. But also our social sort of understandings, the way we use media to connect with each other, and that kind of thing has grown as well. And so researchers have had to face challenges on how do you get access to the audience, where do you go to study an audience, when are we an audience member and not an audience member, and those kind of things are challenges to try to understand the contemporary audience. And the last of these is experiential, what it feels like to be a part of an audience. That has changed quite a bit. And one suggestion Couldry makes about how this experience is different is that our access to media is much more individualized than it has been in the past, meaning that a lot of the streaming platforms, for example, are trying to build their services as building and constructing a unique experience for you as the individual. And so your consumption media is individualized in that way, but it's also individualized in the sense that we're often consuming things in an individualized way. If you're just on your phone, you've got your AirPods in or your earbuds or something, and you're watching a TV show, that's a very different experience than you and your entire family sitting down in front of a TV together. And even if you are in your parents' house, for example, and you're sitting in the living room, you're watching a TV show by yourself, the fact that it's still being broadcast out into the living room, anybody else in the house can come in and interact with it in the moment. But with a smartphone, the experience is much more individual. You are consuming your thing, I'm on my phone over here consuming something different. And so there's that aspect of the experience that is different. Couldry also suggests that we need to pay attention to the global scale of the audience now, that audiences are increasingly connected to each other across international borders in a way that wasn't really experienced in the past. And finally, he says that as part of the experience, we can think about how we engage with media in new ways through aspects of interactivity, that we're able to comment on people's videos and share them through social media and give thumbs up and reactions in the moment in live videos and that kind of thing. And so the experience of being part of the audience has changed. Now, Couldry, to try to capture some of these changes, he is building on previous understandings of the audience. A popular way to understand the audience was developed by scholars Abercrombie and Longhurst, and they introduced the idea of the simple, mass, and diffused audience. That we go from a simple audience, which is that classical audience where you have to be in a place in a theater watching something, a play or a ballet or something as it's happening. Then you move to a mass audience, which is television and radio, that is this mass audience, this image or signal is being broadcast to a large number of people, but they all still have to be engaged with a particular device in a moment to watch something. So it's a mass of people all watching a TV show, for example, all at the same time. And then the diffused audience idea is Abercrombie and Longhurst's recognition that audience experience was changing, that you were starting to watch TV shows and movies, you were starting to listen to music, download music on your phone. You weren't engaging with media in the traditional mass way. And so that was kind of where their model stopped. This idea that content was going out from this mass broadcast kind of idea to being more diffused. It was more part of our everyday life. And so this idea of a diffused audience does kind of capture our sense that media is everywhere, that it's not just in our living rooms like it used to be. And so if the media itself is diffused, then it's understandable to think about the audience as diffused as well, that we're everywhere, we're not locked into specific spaces anymore. And this idea of a diffused audience changes some of our understandings of media culture. The task of audience researchers has expanded from just understanding the audience's interactions with a particular text in the moment that they're consuming it, to the media culture that has grown up around our use of different technologies, different media. And so how we're using them, what the experience is like, what it means for the media culture that we are consuming much more of it on our phones. Does that change how content is created? Does that just change our particular experiences? And so there's a media culture in which audience activity takes place. And so wider meanings are inscribed into that experience, into the text themselves in that media culture. But so diffused audience kind of captures this understanding of the way that our media consumption has moved out of specific locations, this mass audience idea of everything coming together in a living room watching something on TV, and now it's diffused out into the rest of society. But Couldry goes beyond this idea of the diffused audience by introducing the idea of the extended audience. He says that the strength of the diffused audience concept was that it captured that experience of being in a media audience is widely shared and highly differentiated. So it's something that a lot of us have experience with. And as the media content begins to be diffused more, then what is happening is that we are in this experiences are becoming more individualized, as we talked about. But the weakness, he argues, is that it really doesn't change our understanding of the power relations that existed in audience and media relationships in the past. The diffused audience idea is mostly just about traditional media content being diffused out into the wider world. And Couldry points out that our relationship with media has changed in ways beyond just the fact that you can watch a TV show on your phone. And so he offers the idea of the extended audience to try to understand how the audience interacts with media in a legitimately new way. And so his goal here is to examine the whole spectrum of talk, action, and thought that people engage in when they are interacting with media. And this talk is either uses media as part of its talk or the actions, or is oriented toward media. We're talking about media. We're either using media to do stuff, or we're talking about media. And the extended audience idea wants to understand the relationship between media, audience, and media culture. And so Couldry's goal here is to broaden our understanding of the relationship between media and media audience, and bringing in that idea of media culture. Again, that's range of ways we're oriented toward the media and deal with them in our lives. And so we're going to be taking a look at a couple of ways that he tries to show this idea of the extended audience, both through looking at our engagement with reality TV as a specific kind of media that an extended audience engages with in new ways, and then also how the audiences become more mobile in a variety of ways. But before that, we need to address some of the power dynamics that exist around this new audience experience in the next video.